Deserts house very few life forms due to being inhospitable wastelands. But could something incredibly deadly be lurking under the surface of the sand? This is Unreal Encounters. Welcome back to Unreal Encounters, where we examine the mysterious and the unexplained and talk about possible theories about what may be happening. Today, I am joined by Lindsay, and actually a new face, we have Garrison.
Hello, happy to be here.
So today we are talking about the Mongolian death worm. Have either of you heard anything about that?
Only once. I was watching this TV show that I was talking about cryptids, and it brought it up briefly.
It is one of the kind of hidden, under... It's a little lesser known.
Yeah.
Newer thing for me. I've never heard of this until you brought it up for the show, so I'm interested to hear about it.
Well, let's jump in. On the eastern part of the continent of Asia is a large expanse of sand known as the Gobi Desert. When you travel through a desert, it is unlikely that you will see any animals. Most critters that live in deserts like to stay out of the sun. This also goes for our cryptid of today. An American man named Roy Chapman Andrews traveled to Asia while writing his book, On the Trail of the Ancient Man. In the book, he discussed an interview with the Prime Minister of Mongolia. The Prime Minister told a story of a large worm with a segmented body that came to around 3 feet in length with a deep red color. But worse than the color was the fact that the worm carries a poison on it that means almost instant death for anyone it encounters. Hence the name, Death Worm.
Okay, yeah.
Wow.
I was imagining something a lot bigger, but small spooky worm full of poison is also very scary. I was thinking more like Dune sandworm sort of deal.
I mean, it does conjure the image of a gigantic worm when you hear death worm, but I feel like we'd have seen that.
Yeah, I think so
That
too. Yeah.
would have been on the news sooner or later.
Yeah, and you think some of our satellites would have captured something tunneling through the thing, but 3-foot worm.
Yeah.
And it's bright red. That's kind of the terrifying part of it.
Yeah. I mean, could be a snake.
You jumping ahead on me?
Yeah.
Jumping into my theories already?
That was my first thought, to be honest.
Some kind of snake?
Yeah.
You don't think there are giant worms in the desert?
It's very hard for anything in the desert to get that big, just due to the fact that there's such limited resources.
It's true, yeah.
Gotta sustain life somehow, and that's by being small.
Or being very deadly.
Yes, that too.
Sometimes the two go hand in hand.
It's true. Small and deadly. I mean,
Scorpions.
Scorpions and every other little
Scorpions,
tiny...
scorpions, rattlesnakes, Gila monsters.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of small deadly things.
There are a
Desert is just full of terrifying creatures, let's be honest.
Yeah.
You gotta fight to survive in this harsh environment. Yes.
In 1990, a man named Ivan Mackerel traveled to the Gobi Desert in order to find this creature. Ivan was a notable cryptozoologist who had taken part in hunts for the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot. He took a team of people to the desert to hunt for the Mongolian death worm. Due to the fact that the worms live below the surface, Ivan sought a way to draw the worms above ground. So he built a device to create tremors in order to draw the worm up to the surface. Ivan may have been inspired by Frank Herbert's Dune and the thumpers used on the sandworms. Over the years, there have also been many other expeditions to find the elusive death worm. Many shows and cryptozoologists have attempted to find the creature to no avail. That does not, however, account for all the eyewitness testimony of locals who claim to have seen the creature while out in the desert, with the bulk of sightings peaking around 1950s and then tailing off.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, what's got me going is that, because one, there's also the movie Tremors, which is, which is very much kind of, again, kind of pulling from Dune a little bit, these worms underground that are, but whenever I hear cryptozoologist, I have to put up my little skepticism flag, a little bit.
Little whoop,
Yeah.
exclamation mark,
Yep. I was recently part of teaching children good research skills, and we watched a clip from History Channel about
gosh.
Easter Island,
Oh, dear.
and It was the guy that was like.
Well, that was your first mistake, was watching History Channel for history.
Because we were talking about good sources of information, so we showed that as a thing. It's like, you would think, but
If you think History Channel
check your
is
sources.
good, not so much.
Cross-reference and read laterally.
What I find interesting is how there's been plenty of testimonies from like locals, like those who live in the area, but anytime someone from outside tries to find this death worm, it sounds like we usually come up empty-handed.
Yeah.
So the thing is, what are the people who live in the Gobi Desert, what are they seeing that all these experts are just missing? Is it just like pure dumb luck that they just happen to be in the wrong place, wrong time?
Yeah.
Or are they looking for the wrong creature?
Could be. I think it may also be a frequency issue too, is because these guys go there for like 2 weeks, try and find nothing. Whereas you have people that will live their whole lives walking through the desert, and they'll just you go in the desert hundreds of days, you're going to see it one of the days.
Yeah.
That's true.
So that could be sort of a reasoning for that, but also could be not that.
Yeah.
With the sightings and the stories talked about, it is time to touch on the theories of what the Mongolian deathworm could possibly be. Our first theory is that the deathworm was actually another animal entirely. The Gobi Desert is home to countless creatures, many of which could be considered the deathworm. People have pointed to both the Tartar sand boa and some species of legless lizard. These animals do not have the intense poison that the deathworm is famous for, but some believe this is something that may have been added to the story, as there are no actual confirmed deaths from the deathworm.
That would make sense, and to add on the whole legacy behind the deathworm's like vicious poison, that could just due to the fact of even though there are no confirmed deaths, it could just due to the fact you're in the middle of a desert. If you get bitten by anything even remotely venomous and you're nowhere close to civilization, your chances are very slim.
You're in trouble anyway. That's a good point. Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah. And you did say snake earlier.
Yeah,
which
I did.
A lot of people do think snake is.
Yeah, and when you were showing us the pictures of it off camera, I was looking at it and I was trying to figure out what could this be? What could this thing look like? A little bit gruesome, but I was thinking about, because it's talking about kind of oozes this poison sort of thing, or that it's on its
poison
skin,
all over it.
It's sort of glistening, and it does look very oozy in the picture there. This is really, really gross, but I was thinking about possibly a snake that had been skinned. Yeah. And so it's the sinewy red, bloody muscle and things like that.
Yeah.
That could be it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the Tartar sand boa.
Okay, yeah.
So
not red, not bright red.
Yeah.
Red,
although if you get the right light on it, it might be.
If the thickness of the boa is about right, that you would think it's a giant worm.
Yeah, about a yard long.
And if it is the remains of a snake, the nerve systems in snakes can be still active even after death. So maybe someone just got too close to a dead snake corpse and got bitten.
Maybe.
And there are also the legless lizards.
Oh, these guys are the best.
This is the one that I think is almost closest.
Yes.
Are any of these confirmed to be venomous or secrete
No, they're
toxic
not.
solutions? Okay.
They don't, but they do. There are some that live in the Gobi Desert.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be cool, because I think there might be a little bit of uncanny valley with the legless lizard, because it looks like a snake, but it's not a snake, and it looks like a worm, but it's not a worm.
Because worms don't get that big.
What am I looking at?
And it's very interesting too. I've touched a legless lizard's hide, and in kind of comparison to a snake, I went to a reptile house. It was so much fun. But it's a lot drier and rougher than you would think, because you look at a snake, it's very sleek, very smooth, but then the legless lizards are just little cords of sandpaper.
Well, and it's also possible that because most of the snakes are brown to blend in with the desert, but it's possible some of them have a mutation that made them bright red, and somebody saw one in the middle of the desert and was like, I'm not touching that.
And also makes sense that that's why they haven't seen them that often, is because
they get eaten by
they're
hawks and stuff because
they're
bright
slithering
red.
targets.
Yeah, too obvious.
Yeah.
Our second theory is that the Mongolian deathworm is or was real. The Gobi Desert is 500,000 square miles, meaning there's a lot of desert, and we can't be everywhere at once. Also, the death worm finds its home underground, meaning unless we have a way to get it to the surface, we have no way of actually seeing it, even if it is real. The most compelling evidence for it being real is the eyewitness testimony from locals who would have been in the desert a lot.
I wonder if it was almost like, kind of an exaggeration in translation.
Could have been,
that
yeah.
like death worm, because possibly, the guy that went to talk to the Mongolian prime minister was maybe communicating with him through a translator.
Yeah.
Which is very common.
Especially at that time.
Yeah. And so maybe in trying to describe this Mongolian death worm, that's the title that came out, but, is maybe trying to describe something a little bit more mundane. Or, I don't know. Because also there is, worm. If you do WYRM is you get into dragons
very
and
different creature.
dragons
Yeah,
and
very
things like
different.
that, and that's kind of a little bit more of what we're is kind of a mythological sort of slithery thing.
Yeah, it's possible.
Another thing, why it could have been another form of mistranslation, why it could be called a death worm. What if if they are real? What if they're just scavengers? We don't they see these giant worms around the side of maybe a fallen animal, and so you see this freaky giant red worm on the ground. You're gonna think holy crud, that thing just killed that animal. But in fact,
it's just covered in the viscera of the corpse that it was already devouring.
Yeah,
sort of thing,
it could be just a scavengers.
No.
Yeah, just a bloodied worm that's feasting on some dead animal, and you're like,
Maybe
that thing
it's
toppled a
worth it.
camel, get out of here!
No, but it was
the camel
just
spiders.
it was just poking around in the corpse. And got a little
Just
messy.
looking at.
Yeah.
And I do have to remind myself, this is 3 feet, because every time you hear Mongolian death worm, you're like, oh, it's like the dune worm just
Yes.
coming out and swallowing a
Yeah.
friggin' giant machine
Yeah,
platform.
yeah.
It's no, this is a little
Yeah.
3-foot-ish worm that's just incredibly deadly.
Yeah.
Our Earth hides many things below its surface, and it is interesting to wonder what may be hiding under there. But even if it's not hiding the death worm, it's hard to argue that the Mongolian death worm hasn't had an impact. From the sandworms of Dune to the graboids from the Tremors franchise, and even many games like Subnautica with its ice worms, and Dungeons & Dragons' purple worm that even boasts a very similar deadly poison. The Mongolian death worm has definitely left its impact on the pop culture of our world, and whether or not it truly lies in the sands of the desert, it exists in our world nonetheless. Well, that brings us to the end of our episode. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe so you can be notified when the next one comes around, and we will see you in the next video. Stay curious.